all part of the same energetic thing. And we're linked through quantum entanglement. We're linked through physics. We're linked through the quantum realm and quantum energies. And that everything is linked. And so if everything is linked, then we are all one. So since we're linked and we're all one, and we have to realize that our thoughts are literally leaving our skull and also entering this energetic grid. So right now, as we're thinking, we know that light waves leave our skull. We know this because we can put an EEG cap on your head and we can capture those light waves. We can't see them with our eyes because humans can only see 1% of the light spectrum, but we can capture those light waves. We can send them to a computer and we can analyze those waves on a computer. So we're capturing them. Now, when you aren't capturing them with an EEG cap, where are they going? Well, they're going into this grid that already exists. So when I figured this out, I realized that the book of life was real. Like everything you've ever done is recorded. There's no way to escape it. You know, it's out there in this field. And if you have the right frequency, you can tap into that information and pull it in. I think also a lot of times we get these great ideas for inventions and so forth. Sometimes we just get on the same frequency as a already existing thought, and we are able to download it and discern it and act on it. And we say, hey, I came up with this great idea. Sometimes it's not our idea. Sometimes we actually download that information.
I have a lot of artist friends too, and we talk about this phenomena, you know, how like songs really come through us and not from us. And like Michael Jackson is kind of infamously quoted about working hours late into the studio because if he didn't spend that time, then Prince would get the song, you know? And
yeah,
like,
right.
There is that real field, and I think it's been tough to be really conventionally accepted because, you know, we're starting to catch up with a lot of the understandings that we're talking about now in terms of a traditional sense. But I've had many experiences where it's confirmed in my own reality, but it's tough to, I guess, fully scientifically prove the case for the Akashic field.
Yeah. Scientifically, it's hard to prove. But what we can say is if we take circumstantial evidence, so if we take the fact that we know that our mind is generating waves that leave the skull, we know that in membrane theory that there's this particular energetic grid that's connecting all of us. We can hypothesize that those thoughts are entering into that realm and getting into that grid. We know that radio waves sent out from the I Love Lucy show in the 1960s are still traveling through space. And if you have the right technology, you can decode that and you can actually watch I Love Lucy 10 light years away. Same thing is happening with our minds.
It's just, I think it's so important to have an open mind when exploring a lot of these things because, like you said, we can only see such a fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. We think that what we're observing is reality, and reality and the objective reality is such a small fraction of it.
It's like,
yeah.
It's so small. We don't see gamma waves, beta waves. We don't see infrared. There's so much ultraviolet, you know, the multi-spectrum. We're literally only seeing a very small sliver, red, green, and blue.
As you see technologies exponentially rising, it's not far out from the possibility that we could create like a GTA 10 or a Sims 100 where the simulated reality could be something like where it would appear that there are conscious experiences happening in the creation of our own. So I know we spoke to it a little bit earlier, but what do you think are the possibilities of us living in base reality, and what do you really think about simulation theory?
Yeah. Well, base reality, I believe, is very far away from us, and I could be wrong. It's my own theory.
How would we even know?
We wouldn't really be able to know. But when I just see that we've already gone and started creating our own simulated universes, I have to say, how many times has this happened? Could it be? What are the odds that we're the very, 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 very first ones to be in this simulation? It just to me seems like, we may not be close to base reality, man. I mean, the odds are so small. You have a better chance of winning like 5 mega lottos or whatever they call those things, right? So I think that base reality is these nested realities, and the one obviously maybe at the very top or the very bottom, depending on which direction you're looking, could be the very first one. And then at some point, that civilization or civilizations within that universe become sophisticated enough to try to duplicate what they're living in some medium. And for us, it's digital. We're creating a digital reality, which is what now is flourishing, and AI and everything else is in there. I think eventually it'll get to the point where we can even inject ourselves into that artificial realm. Now, right now with VR and AR, we can kind of do it. but I think there'll be this almost like an avatar experience where we really are transferring our consciousness, symbiotic linking to the reality of that realm and experiencing it as if we're really there. Not like we're, here kind of walking around and bumping into walls with these funny glasses, but actually being in the full simulation. Kind of like, quote unquote, God descending from the heaven into into reality. And maybe they will think we're gods in there,
How does this tie in with our understanding of multiple dimensions and parallel universes?
Well, the multiple dimensions exist within this one universe. So this universe has, according to theoretical physicists like Michio Kaku, 11 dimensions. Now, what's interesting about that, I have been talking about this for a long time. I also talked about the hypothesis that the human mind connects to 11 dimensions about 8-10 years ago.
And also in ancient yogic texts, they talk about 11 dimensions for thousands of years.
Well, there you go.
What a coinkydink.
It's all there. Listen, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And then just 3 years ago, the Brain Institute came out and said the human mind is connecting to 11 dimensions. So it's just like the chakra, I mean, it's chart. It's just going straight up. We're connecting in every single dimension consciously. And so we have that. So our universe is multidimensional. And every thought that we create in our minds to even build something like this microphone starts off in the multidimensional platform. First, somebody sits down and they think about what they have, what would a microphone be able to do? Now, that's floating around in higher dimensional thinking. And then you collapse that into 2 dimensions by drawing it on a piece of paper or putting it into a CAD design, computer-assisted design. That's still 2D, even though it looks 3D. And then you transfer that information to an engineer who then manifests it into 3-dimensional reality that you can touch and move around on the XYZ axis in space-time in the 3rd dimension. So every single thing that exists in the entire 3rd dimension was manifested from the higher dimensional thought and collapsed into reality, 2D, then into 3D. Now, on a multidimensional scale, every universe potentially has multiple dimensions, and we're living in a multiverse. So there are all these universes moving around in this huge soup, maybe even colliding with one another, creating a white hole, which then sucks energy out of a other universe and sends it into a brand new creation of another universe. So it could be that even the friction of bumping together creates more universes. Black holes lead to white holes and so forth and so on. It can get so crazy. But I do believe that there's this alternate reality or alternate timeline. So now we have a whole other thing that, the reason why they talk about the grandfather paradox, if we were able to go back in time, if we killed our grandfather, how did we go back in time to kill him? I think that's because if you go back in time to kill your grandfather in the grandfather paradox hypothesis experiment, what happens is when you go back in time, you're not on your timeline anymore. You've already shifted into a totally different timeline in the same universe. So there's multiple timelines within universes. This thing goes crazy. So you can just keep going and going. There's so many possibilities, so many potential outcomes when everything exists all at once from higher dimensions, past, present, and future.
So I know we spoke to it a little bit about this, like the purpose of this 3rd dimensional reality serves. Can you reflect on that again and just, because each dimension has its own relation to, for example, time and space and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I believe that the 3rd dimension is really a place for us to learn. I think that we're definitely connected to our higher selves here, and our higher selves are probably living in true reality wherever that's located. But that here, it's all about the mission. And what is the mission? Not only collecting data, but also learning from experiences. How long will it take a civilization in this sector of this particular galaxy, in this universe, to become awakened enough to sustain a golden age? We've seen the rise and fall of golden ages. How many of these galaxies can achieve a golden age and actually sustain it without falling again? How many of these people can get to a certain point where they've achieved a certain level of wisdom and consciousness that can transmute even multi-dimensions, becoming an adept initiate and all these ascended masters and so forth? And I think this is a grand experiment. So when you look at it, it's like, wow, being born again, for example, right? A lot of people think that's when you go and you're giving yourself to the Lord and you're getting baptized and all of that. But I really believe that it's about being here in this 3rd dimension and figuring out what you did wrong and understanding where you made your mistakes, looking at those mistakes, analyzing them, learning from them, and learning how not to repeat those mistakes so you can become a better person. And every day our goal is to become a better person a little bit at a time, every single day, trying to work towards perfection. Not that we can become absolutely perfect. Maybe it's a possibility, but working towards that goal. But you'll see over time, those little tiny pieces of effort every single day, when you look back, you'll be able to say, wow, look where I came from a year ago, 2 weeks ago, a month ago, whatever it was. You can realize that I've grown consciously since then. I've been born again through my own spirit. I've actually learned from past mistakes. I've realized them. I've created changes in my life to make myself a better person, and I'm moving forward. And I believe that's the path that we're on. How long can it take before a certain number of people are able to realize this and move towards those different levels? I believe when a certain amount of people get to that level, it's going to spark a sustained golden age, which is the ultimate goal. I believe that is the ultimate test of the third dimension.
I like the way you kind of broke down just really it's the path of purification. This is the Know Thyself podcast. We're really focused on how, first starting on an individual level, that path of purification of our mind and our body, we start to realize the true nature of who we are. And by realizing the true nature of who you are, you become the most effective steward in supporting the planet and others doing the same. Helping ultimately us all move towards a greater state of well-being, towards a golden age, like you're saying, collectively and individually. And there's that Vedic saying about truth waits for eyes unclouded by longing. And I think that we have so much conditioning and so much noise going on in our internal reality that we can't actually perceive. We have no shot at perceiving what could resemble anything even closer to reality, And so just any thoughts you have on the power of knowing ourselves, the path of that purification process?
Yeah. Well, there's so much power in knowing ourselves. I think a lot of people have been programmed into not knowing themselves, like you talked about, because like I say, when you're born, you're given a name, a race, and a religion, and you spend your whole life defending a false identity. What? Most people have no idea who they are. Who is Billy Carson? I didn't give myself the name. Somebody gave me that name. Why is Billy Carson in this religion? Because somebody gave me that religion. Why do I have these particular beliefs and traditions? Because somebody gave them to me. From the time I was a little tiny kid, I had no say in the matter. And I had to grow up with that, and I had to then project that. I had to also defend it, and then I had to pass it on to somebody else and force it down their throats as well. So when do we break the generational curse of being programmed to not know who we truly are? I think every person's mission is also to go on their own hero's journey within to figure out who they are. What are they about? What are my passions? What do I really love? Let me question some things in my reality that I may not even be comfortable with, not just blind faith, but to question things and then look and do research into those things so I can then maybe figure out what might be a better path for me. I think ultimately that will lead people into finding out their true self-value, finding out what they're passionate about, and learning how to live within their passion. When you live in your passion, then you're really getting to know yourself. You're honoring yourself, right? You are really not living within what your body is even vibrating at. When you're not in your passion, everything is dark. You're always frustrated. You're always mad. You're depressed. You're angry. People are always snapping at other people. It's just bad. It's a low frequency. But when you finally dig into yourself and say, man, I really need to find out who I am and go on that hero's journey within, wow, life just changes. Everything becomes so fun. Work becomes not work. It's just part of your natural vibration, which is why I'm even here right now with you today.
Yeah. But once you arrive there, you get to taste the beauty of the fruits of that labor, of that work, which at times is very hard, very challenging, a lot of death and rebirth cycles, and there's this quote from Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, which is one of my favorite individuals. The search for reality is the most dangerous of all undertakings, for it destroys the world in which you live. And I think that oftentimes we think of the spiritual path being like rainbows, butterflies, and puppies. In reality, it's like death, rebirth, purification, and facing all the uncomfortable things that you don't want to look at so you can arrive at truth. Like, how can you arrive at truth without letting go of what's false? And sometimes that can be painful because our conditioning is so attached to it. It's like identified with it in that structure. And so as we dive into some of the more explorations around ancient history and the search for reality, I also think that it's so fascinating, like why you've garnered such a big audience, why people love your content and these kind of discussions is because it's very intriguing to explore these possible alternative understandings about where we came from, the nature of reality. And at the same time, I just want to invite holding the paradox, being able to have the matured intellect where you can hold things, you cannot existentially let it weigh on your soul, but you can see like what is really going to be a seed of transformation in how you live your life. And with that understanding, we can go explore all these things around the Emerald Tablets and ancient civilizations and everything, because they, I think, do point at very interesting things that can be helpful for us as well. But yeah, I just wanted to share that. And anything else you do before we kind of start going into this next phase of the pod?
Yeah, I would just tell people, look, man, just really, really take some time to get a sheet of paper out and draw a line down the middle and write on the left side all the things that you're passionate about. Just keep thinking for about an hour or two. Good old-fashioned paper and pen, right? Or a pencil. And then on the right-hand side, organize them in the order that you would deem to be the order you would say, if I had this opportunity to do this first, I would do this first, and this second, this third. And write that list out, and then start really meditating on that list and see which things begin to resonate with you, and see which things already exist within your life that will allow you to achieve some of those things a lot quicker maybe than others. Some you may have to learn, some things you may intrinsically already know, some you may have already done as a hobby. And then find a way to find a need for those passions in the world. Research those particular things that you're passionate about doing or being involved in, and see who needs that in the world. And then see how you then can provide that need to the world. And when you do that, that's a great energy exchange. You're going to feel great, and the side effect is going to be money in your bank account.
I love that. I was just actually in Hawaii yesterday doing a long car drive with a friend, which is one of my favorite places for deep conversations. But he said something that he heard that was really inspiring to me. He said, when you protect your dharma protects you. And I really love that, man, because when you discover that those intrinsic qualities that are unique to you, that are really true to you, it's in some way I can't fully explain. It's like the universe protects you and bringing more of that into the world.
Absolutely. You're on the frequency of it.
Yeah.
And the universe is a mirror, so it's going to give you what you're putting out. If you're putting out low frequency, it's going to give you a lot of low frequency stuff. If you're putting out high frequency, it's going to give you back high frequency. It's just a mirror. It's a boomerang. So when you're throwing out those low vibrations, it comes right back. People go, man, I have a problem for every solution. That's because you're putting out conscious thoughts with problems and issues, and you're automatically assuming there's going to be something negative that's going to happen before the outcome even happens. I'm already thinking the end before the end. I'm going to win. I'm going to succeed. This is going to be great. It's going to be successful. This podcast is going to be amazing. It's going to go viral. My thoughts are totally different, and that's why I feel personally like a lot of my stuff goes viral. When I make a post on social media, I imagine transmitting my life force energy into the button when I tap it to upload it. So I'm sending energy into the device. So these are all the things that I'm doing. And then, it's no wonder why it's everywhere.
Quick one. Basically, every single day for the past 3 years, when I meditate in the morning, I do it in front of a red light device. Red light therapy has over 4,000 peer-reviewed studies, many of which show how it helps with cellular healing, skin health by stimulating collagen, testosterone, sleep, mood, and so much more. I personally can feel the benefits in real time, and I think it's a great way to get healthy light in the morning before sunrise, especially on cloudy days. Bond Charge is a great option for red light devices because they have the lowest EMF on the market and there's no flicker. They ship worldwide very quickly and they're easy with returns and exchanges. They also have an array of other science-backed products that you can check out. Go to bondcharge.com/know thyself. That's BONCHARGE.com/know thyself and use coupon code know thyself to save 15% off. Bond Charge products are all HSA, FSA eligible, giving you tax-free savings of up to 40%. I hope you enjoy. Back to the episode. Amazing, man. So let's start. What first inspired you to start exploring the ancient civilizations history and in the human history? Like, what really sparked your interest in that first?
Yeah. Well, it goes back a long time ago. In 1977. So you might not have been born yet.
Was not.
I know you weren't. I was 7 years old already, and I was in my backyard playing in the backyard, looking up at the sky, watching the airplanes from the local private airport go over, the Opelika Airport. I saw an object in the sky that I couldn't understand. It didn't look like an airplane. No wings, no tail fin, no cockpit, no windows. just an orb that kind of glowed and moved across the sky in seconds instead of minutes like a normal plane. And then it came back and it came to an abrupt stop about 250 meters above me, completely silent, and then gone. So I ran in the house. I started screaming, Mom, you won't believe what I just saw, and everything else. And she was like, there's advanced beings that were here in the ancient past. And I was like, and she told me, you got to go to Machu Picchu one day, which is why I dedicated my first book to her. But the next day I went to the library in my school, Rainbow Park Elementary, and I asked the teacher to go to the library so I can get the Encyclopedia Britannica, the original Google, because we didn't have computers, cell phones, beepers didn't even exist yet. So I go get the encyclopedia. I start looking in aerospace technology because I'm trying to find what I saw in the sky. I never found it. I researched swept wing, delta wing, ballistics, intercontinental ballistics, everything you could think of, but I couldn't find it. Hovering platforms. And then that led me into aerospace tech. Aerospace tech led me into all different types of technologies. It became a passion of mine. And then one day, after having this weird experience, I ended up looking online and finding worldwidetelescope.org. And in there, I discovered that all the space probe data exists in this online platform. When I went in there, I started looking at Mars and Mars panoramas. Okay, then Spirit rover, Opportunity rover, McMurdo Valley, and now I'm inside the eyes of the mast cam on the rover, and I can zoom in, zoom out, pan left and right, and I start seeing anomalies that look like broken pieces of what I would consider to be technology, machinery. Some things look like structures that I know I've seen in ancient civilizations reading books on Earth. And I was like, what in the world is going on? That led me into making a hypothetical connection in my mind. Could this be part of Earth? Could Earth have somehow, people from Earth have been on Mars? That's how it started. And from there, I started diving into ancient sites and traveling the world nonstop and making these connections and looking at anomalies. My team that I put together, it's called the United Family of Anomaly Hunters. A lot of our work has been on Fox News, CNN, all the mainstream, Huffington Post. Over 1 million downloads of these images from the space agencies and over 60,000 anomalies documented, things that shouldn't be there. And then being able to correlate them with things that we've seen here in terms of rundown structures, broken parts, even ancient buildings or ancient structures that are kind of weathered or flooded. And I said, man, and it has to be a link. And then that took me into ancient tablets. So I got into tablets and I started seeing the tablets were talking about people living on Mars. And I said, oh my God, this is the connection. And then from there, I just dove in, head first. I was going crazy. I mean, I must have devoured, I don't even know how many, well over 1,000, different tablets, inscriptions, papyruses, cylinder scrolls, ancient texts from all around the world. Then I started going to speak with indigenous tribes, wisdom keepers, sages. I just didn't stop, man. I just kept going 38 times now around the planet. And that's where I made the connection. That's how I got into ancient civilizations. By seeing something in the sky.
So we have these experiences in life that really our pattern interrupts and push us beyond our current paradigm that we can't explain, that pull us towards, I feel like, what we're here to explore and share with the world. And that's so very much your case. I know you've had many experiences traveling the world. Is there any particular profound experience that sticks out that really solidified your desire to make this your life's work?
Well,
I know there's been many.
Yeah, there's been a few, but one was the outer world experience, was really the one that the thing that triggered me into looking into Mars in the first place. So I would just tell you, but there was a situation where I was working on this huge project. And I bring this project up because I think the project is somehow linked to this experience. Why, I don't know, but I think it is. So I decided after studying the binary solar systems in the universe that binary is more common than a singular star. And our sun also, then now scientists have hypothesized based on its movements that we are in a binary solar system, that there is another star out there, a brown dwarf that you can't see with the naked eye. It's way, way out there, far beyond the orbit of Pluto, and it orbits our sun now. They discovered every 4,200 years. But at the time, I didn't know that. This is new science. Back then, I just knew that through the precession of the equinoxes, our sun was speeding up and then slowing down. And I said, what can make something speed up by 2,000 years? It must be breakaway speed. To catch that breakaway speed to go around and orbit something. And so I thought that was linked to a lot of ancient texts that I saw that talked about these cyclical catastrophes. And I thought that these catastrophes were linked to this additional gravitational field. So I decided to build this underground shelter system called Fort Terra Nova, which I did. It was on the History Channel in Countdown to Apocalypse years ago, back in 2013, I believe it was. And it can save the lives of 360 people underground. It's about the size of 3 Walmarts. It's not a small place. It's huge. It's powered by a turbine diesel engine. Unfortunately, I wish I could get something else, but I didn't have any other tech at the time. That's what this one is powered by. And it's dome structures underground, townhouse living underground. That I had left that particular project that day. I came home, sat down on the couch, and I was just watching ESPN. And all of a sudden, the room just turned this lavender color. The TV went boom and just shut off. And I thought my kids were playing a joke on me, so I looked over my left shoulder because the boys lived on this side, the girls lived on that side at the time, and nobody was there. And when I turned around, these 2 beings were in my face. The chair was maybe about the same height as this chair I'm sitting in now, so they couldn't have been more than 4.5 feet, maybe tall, because I'm about 6'4". And their eyes were like almonds, but not real. Almost like they looked plasticky or kind of artificial, like they were covers, not real eyes. And I was screaming, like I said before, no sound was coming out of my throat. But I did feel like my brain was shaking inside of my skull. I could feel this vibration and just shaking. Now, at that time I was married. This is a while ago, my first wife. She was in the room behind the next wall. Kids, 2 boys in that room, 2 girls in the other room. Nobody heard or saw anything. This lasts for I'm estimating maybe a minute at the most, not that much time. And then they literally just turned around, and they don't walk like a normal walking gait. They just kind of bounced or dangled, but they went through the wall. And then the lights came back on, the TV came back on, and I ran around the house, and it scared the hell out of everybody. One of my sons is completely estranged from me still to this very day. He's afraid, he's horrified. He thinks that whatever that experience was, it's gonna affect him in some kind of negative way. So we really don't even communicate anymore. This has been decades now. So it just didn't have a good effect on my family, and I got divorced. Not particularly just from that, but that was part of the straw. They couldn't understand all the things I was researching, and what I was into was like, my ex-wife's mom was telling me that I was worshiping the devil with all this. I was a devil. I'm like, what are you guys? I'm just researching this stuff. It's interesting. So long story short, but that same night is when I heard the words worldwide telescope. It played in my mind like a broken record over and over and over and over, and it wouldn't stop thousands of times. So finally I said, I got to figure out what this is. This is after the experience. So I went to my computer. At that time, Google wasn't famous yet. It was excite.com. So I typed in excite.com, and I went to Worldwide Telescope. And the first search result is worldwidetelescope.org, which is still open today. You can still go there. You can still go in. Now, back then, you had to download the software. Now it's HTML5. You don't have to download it, or you can download it depending on what you want to do. And then you can look at all the space probe data. You can go into the different Mars rovers, all the missions. You can go to the moon. You can go to different star systems within our known universe. It's all in there. Huygens probe data, it's all in there. And that's really what eventually led me to Mars, which led me to seeing sites that looked like they matched stones in Peru, which made me want to go to Peru after my mom told me that. She said advanced beings were in the tops of mountains in Peru in ancient times. This is in the 70s, she told me this. And I said, I got to go. And that started the whole journey into this ancient civilization thing. And that was one of the most memorable moments in my life that put me on this path and has kept me on this path. And in some ways, give me the energy to keep digging, to find the truths as to what happened to me and what else is out there.
All right.
I wasn't going to go all the way, but
no. I'm glad you did, man. I need to unpack this. Like, that's what you just said is wild. So you're sitting in your room, with the TV on. Yeah. The room starts to turn lavendery, and then you turn your head from looking back, and then these beings appear, or you see them walk in?
They're there. No, I mean, I look back, hey guys, stop that. And when I turn back, they're right here, instantly.
And how far away from your face? Like
maybe 8 to 10 inches.
Whoa. Yeah. So like 2, and they were
2. Yeah.
Were they like gray?
They weren't gray like a gray. They're still kind of almost
like... They looked like a typical gray would look, like the gray alien?
They had the similarity between what you see in movies, almost like that. Almost. Not exactly like the typical one, but it's almost... Whoever started making these things, somebody saw something because it's so close. Slight differences. A slit, though, for a mouth and little tiny holes for ears.
Had you seen movies or imagery or anything with beings that looked like that prior to that experience?
Well, just the typical gray aliens that you see from time to time. They weren't exactly like the ones we created. They have a slight few differences, but their skin, well, the skin that was looking like on their face, it looks, again, it's hard to explain. It's like almost like plasticky, in a way, plastic or something, or some kind of artificial material. I don't know, maybe that's some type of sleeve over there. I don't know. And then, but the body definitely had some type of a suit on. And the suit was slim body fit. You can see it because it had a little bit of an edge right around the neck that let me know that maybe that was the outfit that they were wearing. I can only assume that unless it's part of their body.
So what do you think are the top couple explanations of what actually happened in that moment? Whether it was these like real beings that you perceived, was there some sort of possible like paralysis experience where your consciousness recreated something?
It's so open to speculation. I mean, it could be that I had a real, encounter of the fourth kind where these beings really showed up and engaged me in some way, shape, or form. They didn't speak to me in anything that I could understand, but they left me with that thing playing in my head, because that didn't start until they left. Or maybe it could be some type of a multi-dimensional interaction that happened with me, which is why nobody else can detect it but me. Maybe they got into a specific frequency within my mind. I know that the U.S. military has a device called the active denial system. It can broadcast words, sounds, even images into your mind, and you can see and experience. It can make you feel like you're on fire. It can make you feel like you're in pain. It's to deflect people coming to attack. It's this frequency beam that they send out. I talked about it in my book. And or maybe it's sometimes something just happening, maybe a level of psychosis. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I have never taken psychedelics or anything, to be honest with you. I don't smoke marijuana. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I just don't do that. I don't drink any alcohol or liquor. I drank 3 beers when I was 17, and that was it. And I never liked it because I got sick for 3 days. So I said, I'm done with that. So I don't know what else it could have been. I drink water and coffee and tea. So I don't know. It could have been, but it could be anything. Yeah. But whatever it was, regardless of where it came from or how real or unreal it may have been in this dimension, it drove me to those sites, and those sites led me to ancient civilizations, and that put me on a whole nother. I took an exit off the highway and went somewhere else.
I could only imagine the amount of fear and confusion as your old life starts to crumble as this new one's being birthed.
It was tough. You talked about it,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough. The whole breaking down and rebirth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you make it through that?
Man, it's tough. It's tough to keep talking about it, But yeah, it was, when you lose your family,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to lose your family, because it's like if you have a pod of dolphins and you take one dolphin away from the pod, people don't understand this, or killer whales, you take one dolphin away, even just one, the whole pod suffers forever. And it's trauma.
Man.
That's why I try to go around that one.
Yeah. No,
tough.
but that's real. It to me just brings forth so much sincerity and genuineness to your story, because why would you want to manufacture any of this when there's so much pain there, right?
I know. Yeah. It's like going and doing shadow work, and I still have to work on this because it's really in there, and it creates triggers and everything else. It's an ongoing process trying to work this out, and being able to just get to the point maybe where I can talk about it without having an emotional outburst. It's just so tough, bro. It's just really, when you love your kids, and when one doesn't even want to text you or see you or anything else, it's kind of like, man, wow, and so it's something that it had so many blessings with it, but at the same time, it's a blessing and a curse in some ways, because like you said, it's the breaking down of one reality and the rebuilding of a whole nother reality that I'm in now. And, I just wish I can get them to see from my perspective, my eyes, to just take a look at some of the research. But You know, the majority of them, not all of my kids, but you know, 2 of them work for me, so that's nice. But you know, just a few of them, they just don't see, you know. And I'm not going to force anything on anybody. You know, that's just not my method, my style. I never put my own thing on anybody because I don't want to be the one that becomes the dogmatic ideologic person that's forcing something down your throat. Everyone took their own path. And, you know, and they're still on their own path. And that's what I believe is the best for everyone, because there's 101 ways to enlightenment.
I just feel how your path is unfolding now. And, you know, as difficult as it was, I'm like, do you feel like you would change anything because of where it's led you? I mean,
there's a certain amount of, I believe that this is my destined path. There's just, I'm so passionate about it. It does hurt, you know. I realized, but every individual person's on their own journey. So when I had to look at it from that method, it allowed me to take a little bit of a step back and realize it really ain't about me. It's about, you know, the mission here. I could still love everyone. I can still love them. I can still reach out to them. I can still try to support them in any way I possibly can, even if it's just consciously. But at the same time, I feel like my true mission was revealed. And it's to bring this information to the world, not just about ancient civilizations, but also about every aspect of reality, which is why I talk on so many topics. You know, is because I believe that there's so many areas of consciousness. If we only focus on one small area, but the other areas are going to lack. So I like to sprinkle a little bit around all the different aspects of reality and consciousness, not just this. But ancient civilizations is such a huge part of helping humanity because the past is prologue, and that means that the past is destined to become the future unless you understand it. So when you can understand the past, it's almost like a kid. If a kid puts his finger in an electric outlet and gets shocked and survives, he's probably not going to do that again. We have to go to the past and see, where did we put our finger in the electric outlet? When did we get shocked? And how can we realize how to not do that again? And little by little, realizing what our faults were in the past, all these ancient wars and things that may have happened, ways that we treated each other, ways that we fallen for divide and conquer tactics. How can we improve ourselves based on what happened before, creating new economic systems, new belief systems and everything else? That's going to guide us in the right direction towards a golden age. And that has to happen.
Amazing. So first off, just again, thank you for your vulnerability in sharing. I know it's difficult to relive that stuff emotionally. And it did lead you down this path to exploring all these ancient creation stories and tablets that it's what's really interesting to me is when civilizations and tribes from completely remote places that have no way to communicate to each other arrive at creating similar pyramids, structures, patterns, stories, and in ways they wouldn't be able to, again, communicate. And so let's start with the Emerald Tablets, because I would love for you to reflect on Hermes Trismegistus, who this individual was. What is the legitimacy of the Emerald Tablets and what they say about the creation story?
Yeah, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, there's actually 2. So one is called the Emerald Tablets, plural, and the second one is called the Emerald Tablet, or the Tablet of Hermes. Now, both of these writings are actually real writings that really did exist. And one of them is located in the Cambridge Library right now.
No one has access to it?
Yeah, people have access to that.
Really?
Yeah, you can get access to that one, yeah.
And so were they in the form of like clay writings?
Well, they're in the form of these stone tablets etched into stone. Okay. And there's the one that's in the Cambridge. It was translated by a few famous people, Sir Isaac Newton, Roger Bacon, the Queen of Sheba, believe it or not. And the other one was also had run through many, many different authors and linguists over time. The Emerald Tablets, plural, have ended up in the hands of the Roman Catholic Church. They're in the Vatican, in the archive. Yeah, I know.
Man, what's down there?
Oh, there's a lot down there. I saw this documentary about maybe 10, 15 years ago. They even have bones down there. That's crazy. Like bones of what doesn't look like a normal hominid. So they got a lot of stuff going on in that archive, and a lot of books. And I think a lot of the books, even from the burning of the Library of Alexandria, which I believe was a hoax. Not that it didn't happen, but the burning was a distraction because it was the largest knowledge heist in history. That's what the burning of Alexandria was, a knowledge heist. Stolen information, which ended up, most of it in the Vatican archives.
So you think simultaneously while that burning was happening, there was...
Yeah, some books burned, but that's the front to cover up the theft of the knowledge, which exactly was what's going on. Because the Roman Catholic Church objective was to push their ideology on the world, and technology and advancements of those sorts of knowledge and philosophy outside of the dogma, where they wanted to ban it.
Yeah.
And they wanted to get as much reach as they can, which is why you find a Catholic church on every corner of the planet. I was in the floating city in Cambodia a few months ago, and there's a Catholic floating church. I'm like, oh my goodness, are you kidding me? So they put their reach out there, and they tried to hoard a lot of knowledge. Due to the papal inquisitions, during that time period of 700 years, they murdered and tortured over 80 million people. That makes Hitler look like an angel compared to what they did. 80 million people over 700 years, ordered by popes. And that was all about suppression and oppression of advanced thinking, philosophy, technology. Scientists had analyzed some of the technological advancements, even of the Arabs, and discovered that we would have been on the moon in the 1800s if it wasn't for the Inquisitions. That's incredible. So we've really been held back technologically and spiritually and emotionally and even consciously because of the religious dogma. So they've hoarded a lot of knowledge, and that's the tablets are real. When you start breaking the tablets down and looking at the time period, even if they were only, let's say they were only 100 years old. All right, let's say they were only 100 years old. Well, guess what? The information in there is more advanced than anything that we've discovered to date, and some of the stuff was just recently discovered. Like, for example, in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, they talk about creating solid matter from cymatic frequencies and photons. Now, that wasn't done until about 3-4 years ago in a laboratory setting. They used cymatic frequencies and photons and finally manifested solid matter.
Which most people aren't even aware that actually happened a few years ago.
Exactly. I mean, the active denial system, that was only built about a decade ago. That's the beam that has the ability to freeze you in your tracks and repel you, make you feel like you're on fire, put voices in your head. They have a tool like that, a technology like that in the Emerald Tablets. So how in the world is this happening? Also in the Emerald Tablets, the ability to transfer your consciousness from one body to another. Now, the 2045 Project, 2045.com, Ray Kurzweil, they transferred a monkey's consciousness into a computer years ago. Now they're working on the next step, which I think it passed because 2015 was the next one, a human mind into a robot. And then by 2045, which is the ultimate goal, a human mind into another avatar. 2045.com. That's also in my book, Compendium of the Emerald Tablets. So
Ray Kurzweil is like the founder, right? And
yes.
he's big proponent on transhumanism and singularity and all that.
Yeah, exactly. So wait a minute. So where's all this tech? All this quantum physics that's in there? There's so much. I can go on and on and on. And I talk about this in the book. So if it's 100 years old, this person must have had a 500 IQ, whoever wrote it then. Okay, because a lot of the stuff was just discovered or finally being entertained in laboratories within the last decade.
Right.
So, but it really is ancient.
Yeah, and so these ancient tablets like the Atrahasis, Enuma Elish, the Giza, the overlap from the creation and the stories of these, the mythic stories.
Incredible. Yeah.
So what is the consilience between all of these mythical creation stories and tablets about our origins?
You find something interesting. The first thing you find is that our solar system is created through the way that astrophysics claims, through the collision and accretion disks and everything else. However, it talks about each planet forming and each planet gaining its own net, which means orbit in ancient texts.
With Norwegian, every day is a new day.
Gaining its own orbit around the sun. And even collisions in the younger period of the solar system, collisions between planets and moons, and how that created debris, and how some of that one planet exploded through a collision and turned into the asteroid belt. How would they know this? Telescopes didn't exist yet, but they shouldn't have even known about an asteroid belt. There's not enough light to look up from Earth and say, oh, I can see the asteroid belt from here. So, but they knew all of it. They knew the shapes, the sizes, and the order of the planets long before modern technology ever even knew it. They claim in all civilizations and all these tablets, this information was brought to us from beings that came from heaven to earth In Africa, they call them the Nitiru, the beings at a time of Zep Tepi that turned mud into a kingdom. In the Sumerian tablets, Enuma Elish and Epic of Atrahasis, they talk about these gods, the Anunnaki or the Anuna, the gods that came from heaven to earth, all right, and built this advanced civilization. The Hopi and the Lakota, they call them the Star Brothers, right? No matter where you go on the planet.
Dogon tribe,
they call them the Nomo, right? In Australia, they call them the Pleiadians. No matter where you go, they all say the same thing, that people from another place came here and brought this wisdom and knowledge and imparted it on us. And they also say that they were seated on this planet. The indigenous tribes of the Americas, the Australian Aboriginals, I mean, they're saying that they were literally brought here. It's an incredible story. How can these disconnected continents and these disconnected cultures all have similar stories written across different mega eons of time? You got to say, wow, at some point there was a global civilization. That civilization, in my opinion, was the Atlantean civilization, that these Anunnaki people were advanced beings. Anunnaki only means from heaven to earth, from space to here. But the civilization they built was Atlantis. And the ring city that sunk or was destroyed was only one capital of dozens that existed, not only on Earth, but also on Mars, according to the Sumerian tablets.
So, like the Enuma Elish, the ancient Babylonian text, which dates around 700 BC, I believe, to these other texts that you're mentioning, having these similar explanations of these beings that came down here. Mm-hmm. Can you, in the most articulate way, describe what the conventional understanding of human civilization is in terms of like what's accepted versus, you know, what happened a couple 100,000 years ago with this creation story and how they obviously differ?
Sure. What's accepted by 75% of the planet, actually more than that, a little bit now, actually 85% less than 85.2% of the planet, is that about 6,000 years ago, the Earth was formed. And people were...
I guess that's crazy. With what? Just like the Catholic Church, Christianity,
even Islam, Muslims.
But not everybody in those religions believe the 6,000.
No, but this is a general.
Sure.
This is where they go. This is this 6,000-year-old theory. And Adam and Eve was created out of the dust, and that two people made it and created 8 billion people on the planet. Now, I don't know about you, but if you take two dogs and make two dogs and make the same two dogs over and over again with their puppies and make those two puppies, third generation is not even going to live. Not enough genetic diversity. You can't take two humans and get 8 billion. We know this already because people who intermate within their family, they have birth defects. It's just a part of genetics. But that's the accepted theory, is that the sky daddy came down with his wand, he took some dirt, little spattle, turned mud into people, and then told these people, you now own this planet and go on and be fruitful and multiply, and that's what happened.
Right.
But that's not the way it actually happened.
So that's the conventional religious perspective. Could you share also the conventional scientific lens?
In the scientific lens, we're talking about now,
12,000 years for civilization, yeah?
Yeah, well, they pushed it back to 12,000 years because they go back to Tepe now, right? Just after the last ice age. It goes back even further than that, but they're saying, okay, we'll give you 12,000 now. We're going to go back beyond the 6,000 to 12,000, go back to Tepe, Karahan Tepe, Darren Kuyu. Those things really do age back that far. And so now they're saying that humans, or Homo sapiens sapien, might have been around for about 200,000 years. That's actually pretty accurate based on what I know genetically. And that just through natural evolution, millions of years prior, coming out of the trees and becoming well, it goes further back than that. If you want to go all the way back, it comes out of the water. We come out of the water, then we get legs, and then we go into the trees, and then we come down from the trees, and then we evolve into walking straight up and erect, and so forth and so on, become Homo erectus, and eventually, we in some way, there's two different factions of us. We destroy Neanderthal, and then we end up becoming Homo sapiens sapien, and we take over the planet through natural evolution. That's the scientific thing. Now, you want to go into the ancient wisdom and the ancient tablets. Now you have to say, this story, to me, makes a lot more sense. But for some people, it might not. The tablets talk about the fact that advanced civilizations had already been built outside of this planet. They went to war with each other in a sector of the sky called the Pleiadian star cluster. That grouping of stars has thousands of stars and hundreds of planets. Imagine a planet is being destroyed, because they talk about destroying actual planets in this text. And now some of that debris could be coming your way. You've got to get off your planet. I believe this is the first occurrence of space refugees. People that were looking to flee that region of space and look to create breakaway civilizations on other planets, which is exactly what we would do on this planet if we had the technology to do it. So Orion, Aldebaran, other planetary, other stars, they go, the Sirius A, B, and C, where the Dogon talk about the Nomo coming from, Earth, and even one planet named Nibiru, which I believe was a planet orbiting a brown dwarf star. And they created these breakaway civilizations. Now, according to the text, they were here doing the work themselves. The work was building cities, creating the civilization. They worked about 250,000 years without interacting with human beings. We were already here. Our cousin was here, a version of Homo sapien, not Homo sapien sapien, but a version. There was going to be a war because these beings called the Igigi in the text were angry that they were doing all this labor and these other guys were just sitting back relaxing, and it's like, this is too much work, we need a break, and they weren't even given a break. It's like if you were a master architect and then you have a foreman, then the foreman has the actual construction guys. So these were the construction workers, and they were volunteers, but they felt like they were turning into slaves. So they decided to fall from heaven to earth, because they came from Mars down to earth. They were working on Mars at the time, to go to war against God, who was God Anu, the head god of these beings. That was in South Africa at a place called Adam's Calendar. They encircled this campus in the Epic of Atrahasis, and they said that we're going to go to war. And then Enki came up with an idea. Said, look, I have an idea. There's an existing being on this planet. We can add our essence to it, and we can get it to bear the load. And they were like, okay, this better work, man. And by the way, we want women. We're taking women back with us. This is where the sons of God mated with the daughters of men and gave birth to the Nephilim. So they took some women and went back with the women. And from there, we have the situation now where we're seeing the first cloned version of a Homo sapien. Now, in the beginning, there was no Adam. This is way before Adam. They're making these people, and the cloning technique is at the Temple of Karnak in Egypt, where you and I were just at a few months back. And I take people to the Karnak and I show them, it's right there in plain sight, the exact cloning technique. And even Muhammad Ibrahim, who was our guide, he also has the same exact story. He tells you the breaking down of how these people were cloned. Now, the cloning problem was the clones couldn't mate and create themselves.
Start your day with Nature Made.
They keep making clones in these Hathor birthing houses. Eventually, Isis says, I'm going to take one of these eggs and put it in my own womb, and I'm going to take it to term. So she gave birth to the first Adamu. It took her 10 months to go to term, and she gave birth to the Adamu. The egg from one of the hominids, put it in her womb, in vitro fertilization back in the day. Boom, 10 months later, we got Adamu. There's a cylinder scroll with her holding the baby up saying, my hands have made it. And that starts the generations of Isis, which is the Genesis, the Genesis. That's the book of Genesis in the Bible. That's what it is, the generations of Isis. And from there, they said, okay, let's mate him with the clones. Didn't work. Damn, so we got to get some DNA out of him. Let's create an Eve, mate them. Oh, we got it. Now they use the same technique of putting in the womb, in vitro fertilization, creating more Adams and more Eves. And then they started putting them in these mating houses, and they had set times to mate, and they couldn't mate out of order because they had to have genetic diversity. Even they knew this. And that's how they created a genetic pool. The evidence that people were here before Adam and Eve is that when Adam's son Cain killed Abel, he was kicked out of the garden. And the first thing he says is, the people out there will kill me. Well, what people? There shouldn't be any people out there. And God says, who's actually Enlil, Yahweh in the Bible, he says to him, I'll put my mark on you so they'll know you're mine and they won't touch you, like a genetic marker. So he goes out there and he says, by the way, when you go out there, you'll find a wife. And he found a wife. And that starts the whole Canaanite tribe, you see? So that's the story from the text. And I think, to me, that story makes a lot more sense just based on my research into cargo cults and what happens when a more advanced civilization meets a less advanced civilization right here on Earth. When we went to the atolls and in the South Pacific and took nuclear weapons there, and we showed up to these islanders who had never seen airplanes and tanks and submarines and people with hats and gear on and guns, and those people worshiped us. They tattooed USA on their chest. They would build artificial planes out of reeds and sticks and worship the planes, and then stare up at the sky and wait for the sky gods to come back and bring them more cans of Spam. So that's, I think, what the planet is right now. the planet is a giant cargo cult. That's where we are.
Oh, man. Okay. All right. So lots to unpack here. In terms of the Anunnaki coming down, what do you think was the stage of development of Homo sapiens at the time before genetic intervention, according to the story?
That's a good question. I believe that some of these skulls we've been finding around the planet are actually our cousins, and that they had bigger skulls, bigger brains, maybe even bigger pineal glands. I believe they were more intelligent than us, not technologically, but spiritually. They could probably speak, through psychic abilities, and silently sending information back and forth, navigating the world. Maybe they had full use of their magnetic crystals in their brain. We all have magnetite in our brains, but we don't feel the magnetic field. But they probably navigated utilizing that Earth's magnetic field. And I think that they were on their own path, and that the genetic modification did a couple of things. Number one, it shrunk the brain. Number one, it shrunk the pineal gland. It disconnected some DNA, which is why they call it junk DNA. It detached some of our DNA. Some of our nodes have been pulled away to take us away from knowing our higher selves spiritually. And so they can program and code us. So they began then programming and encoding us in the way that they wanted us to go. We now have to regain and refine out who we truly are, because it's all still inside of us.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought up the, there are scientists just like say 99-ish% of DNA is junk DNA, non-encoding DNA that we really didn't understand there was a purpose for, but now we are starting to understand there actually is.
Yes, exactly. And they're finding out in genetics like, oh, wait, this DNA actually really does have some purpose in it. And they're finding out that DNA is a storage medium. It can store data. They found out that DNA, one drop of DNA can store 433 petabytes of data. And now they've even increased that amount. So the human body can store 13.5 billion years of data, which is amazingly how old the universe might be.
So again, what does the term Anunnaki mean? Can you talk a little bit about their physicality, like what these stories say they look like and their build and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm, yep. So the Anunnaki, there's a lot of depictions of them that have been left behind, fortunately for us. So we can see that they were really big people. They were mighty men. If you look at even Gilgamesh, for example, who was only half Anunnaki, every time you see a depiction of him, he's holding a full-grown male lion in his arms with one arm. He's yoking a lion, and he's standing up, and the lion's feet aren't even close to the ground. He was known as a big, big man. They called him a hero of old. They called him a savant. And so some of these beings, according to the estimates, could have been as much as 15, 20 feet tall. Real big people, massive people. Over time and through mating with humans, they began to get smaller.
Physicality, like you think they looked like, or we look like them?
Oh yeah, we look like them. They said, let us make man in our image. That made it into the biblical text. It originates in the tablets. So they're making us in their image. They cultivated us to look like them. Now, not that we actually are a replica of them, but the similarities are striking. In other words, you can always tell the slight difference. Even in biblical texts, they have the Anak, that's the Anunnaki. It says in their eyes, we were grasshoppers in their eyesight in the Bible. So we're talking about big people. They say, like, for example, at the Sodom and Gomorrah, when one of these Anunnaki angels was walking into the camp to warn them, like, some of y'all got to get out of here because there's a nuclear weapon about to strike. It's pretty much what's going to happen. They recognized the person not as a normal human being, but also they knew right away from the way the person looked that this was, quote unquote, an angel, or in my opinion, an alien. So it looked like us, but maybe there were some slight differences, more or less probably most likely the size of the body and probably the head.
And so Anunnaki is a bucket term from the beings that came from Mars down to Earth around...
Not just Mars, anywhere in the solar system, anywhere in space. Mm-hmm. You can come from 10 different stars and come to Earth, you're still an Anunnaki. Like if me and you went to Mars and the Martian said, hey guys, where are you from? You're not going to say, man, I'm Andre from Beverly Hills, right? I'm billycarson from Miami, Florida. We're going to say we're Earthlings.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it, yeah. So, and the reason from them coming, there was a resource issue on Mars or something, is the reason why they came down?
Well, not really a resource issue. The reason why they came down is because they felt like they were being overworked. They were commissioned to clean out the Euphrates and Tigris rivers here on Earth, create canals and build cities, and also do the same exact thing on Mars. There were two civilizations running concurrently, one on Mars and one on Earth, according to the tablets, not according to me. On the Mars planet, which was a habitable moon that used to orbit this other planet, that's a whole nother story, conditions were rough and tough, and they felt like they were being enslaved versus being just volunteers. And that's when they said, we've made a lot of demands, and none of our demands have been met. So now we're going to fight for what we want.
How are you personally discerning what you decide when looking at these ancient texts, which ones you take literally versus metaphorically?
It's tough in some ways. Like the Enuma list, for example, it could be a war that's in our solar system in space with planets colliding into planets and blowing up and all of this. It could be, maybe it's a war, but I see some of that really as the formation of the solar system. You kind of have to have a little bit of understanding and grasp of some astrophysics, some basic science, and have read enough things here and there to kind of put the pieces of your own puzzle together. Some of it is up for interpretation, which is why I always encourage everyone to go and read these tablets for themselves. So I don't want to be the only person that's, have this knowledge. There's now dozens of authors, thankfully, but I think everyone deserves the right to be able to go and look this information up for themselves.
One thing that's interesting is seeing, the different structures that have such incredibly intelligent ancient architecture that point to builders that would have much more incredible tools or knowledge or capabilities than often even we would in modern day times right now. And so, much of your work in doing all this is like seeing how all these puzzle pieces kind of fit together to fit a cohesive potential story of,
right.
An alternative view of where we come from. And so when you're looking at the different pyramids and
temples and ancient sites,
from Egypt and Africa and South America, what do you think is the purpose of how they were built?
It's so easy to get your windshield.
Served and
they all had individual purposes. For example, the Great Pyramid at Giza and that plateau is a multifunctional platform or plateau. The Great Pyramid is a multifunctional stone computer, number one. It used to be a power generator, so it generated power as the water used to flow underneath it from the Nile. It's now meandered very, very far away. But back then, it ran right up to the pyramid, and the empty tubes have actually been underneath the pyramid are still there, where the water used to flow. When you have running water underneath crystal magnetized granite, you create something called physiostatic electricity. Those ions rush up into the chamber, and they will go into the Grand Gallery. The Grand Gallery used to have resonating rods. Now, the rods have been removed, but the slots where they went up the Grand Gallery are still there till this very day. Then that energy would be pushed into the King's Chamber, which you've been in with me, right? We meditated in there. Inside the King's Chamber, now that area is like a fusion chamber, and the energy would shoot up through the top, through the apex, and now you have wireless energy. Nikola Tesla tapped into the same exact understanding of how that worked and duplicated it with the Wardenclyffe Tower. Now that wireless energy would transmit around the area, and the crystal granite obelisks would capture it. And then if you had something called a JED, a DJED, it looks almost like a Tesla coil with a cable coming out of it. You'll see it in Egyptian hieroglyphs. It's connected to light bulbs and other technologies, electric gold plating. You can then power it wirelessly from the ambient electricity that's been transmitted from miles away from the Great Pyramid. That's just one purpose. Another purpose, when you look at the way that the Great Pyramid is designed, and the Queen's Chamber, and then you have the King's Chamber. Well, water was set to rush down and into the Queen's Chamber, and with the chemistry and also the metallics down there, you can see how there would be some form of electrolysis that would occur. And I'm not the only one that has this hypothesis. Engineer Christopher Dunn had the same exact hypothesis as me. I just found out about maybe a month ago when I finally talked to him on my podcast. So this electrolysis would extract hydrogen from the oxygen, the H2O, and then you have a hydrogen chamber. So now, what's interesting about that, the way it's connected to the shafts that lead up into space, when you look at the pyramid alignment with the stars on certain millennial alignments, you find out that it aligns with Orion, it aligns with Aldebaran, it aligns with Pleiades, it aligns all these star systems. And what is the frequency that we transmit information on right now from a standpoint of trying to connect with ET, we transmit on the hydrogen frequency because it's the most widely abundant frequency in the universe. So I believe in my hypothesis, I always say hypothesis versus what I read, is that these shafts would shoot the hydrogen beams out towards those stars on certain particular alignments with information, data encoded into the hydrogen. In other words, an update on this breakaway civilization. It was a communications device, long-range communications to other stars. And then it also is a star map. When you look down at Giza from above, you see the Great Pyramid, the other two pyramids, and you see the temples around. And you can actually connect those with lines and then make circles, concentric circles. You'll get the interplanetary map of our solar system. You'll get the sun in the middle, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and you'll even get Mars. And when you take the NASA map of our solar system and you overlay it, it matches down to the millimeter. That's crazy. It even matches to the astronomical unit, which is the distance from the Earth to the sun. That's a measurement unit to count distances in the vastness of space. So how can this be done? Somebody had super advanced foreknowledge. Then the Great Pyramid itself it's in the center of the Earth, not the center of the Earth in particular being the center like the navel, but it's in the center of landmass of the Earth. Now, in order to do that, you have to have a satellite, but not any kind of satellite. If we were going to duplicate that today, we would have to have a polar orbiting satellite. It would have to orbit the planet this way, and as the planet spins on its axis, it would take swaths of data. It would calculate the total amount of mass and pinpoint this is the center of landmass. The next thing is the height of the Great Pyramid is the average height of all the peaks on the planet Earth. So again, you need a polar orbiting satellite, and you have to scan every single peak and mountain that exists on the planet. Then you got to do some simple mathematics to divide it all and come up with the average height and say, okay, that's the height we want to build it to. This whole thing was left behind as a gigantic time capsule for us to unwind and be like, holy crap, these people were amazing. You know, I mean, they had everything calculated and built into this for the time when you and I come to figure it out. And Thoth in the Emerald Tablet says, builded I the Great Pyramid patterned after Earth's force, so that it too might remain through the ages. This is Hermes Trismegistus, 3 times born. Hermes and Thoth are the same exact person. You find that they have many names in different time periods. But he says he built the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx. He claims that he's the master architect and the bringer of thought and the bringer of alchemy and chemistry, which is why that place was called Kemet. Chemistry and alchemy come out of there. And he went around the world duplicating that. He goes to Mesoamerica, which is now South America, and he builds Teotihuacan in Mexico, right? That pyramid there has the same exact base as the Great Pyramid. Okay, that's the blueprint. Exactly 50% the height as the Great Pyramid. Built on top of an aquifer, all 6 pyramids both aligned with Orion. So you see again, the master architect at his work again. These things aren't coincidences. Most of the megalithic structures are on the 33rd degree parallel of the Earth. Why the 33rd degree parallel? When you look at the Earth's energetic grid and you see the magnetic fields whipping out of the planet, you see these huge swaths of magnetic fields coming out of these areas where all these megalithic sites are located. How did they know this? What kind of technology did they use to detect these magnetic fields? And how did they utilize them in the construction process? All a lot of big time question marks, but it's just amazing.
Just thinking at the level of intelligence, civilization or group of people would need to have to make the decision to devote so many resources to craft something that is so cosmologically, geometrically, mathematically aligned on so many different accounts, right? You just gave a few, but there's like there's hundreds of different. Many more. It's insane.
It's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With also in the order of the pyramids and how they're all laid out on the plateau, and that's just one example, right? Within Egypt.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think that box in the King's Chamber is really was, and what's the reality of the Ark of the Covenant?
That box is, first of all, the box that's inside the King's Chamber is not a sarcophagus. Okay, I can't fit in it. I'm 6'4". My knees would be slightly bent, and so I think, if you're gonna take the energy and the time to hoist that heavy granite up there, at least make it a size that maybe somebody can really fit in there, right? So, but also the way it's set up in there, you can see it's off-centered, which means it might have been added later. It almost seems like an addition to the Great Pyramid, and not something that was originally built into the structure. And then you look at the dimensions. So I said, this is interesting. Let me look at the dimensions of this thing. So I look at the dimensions of this probably in 2014 is when I found out the dimensions of that box, of that rose granite box inside the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid are the exact same dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant from the biblical text. And that kind of blew me away. I was like, wait a minute. The Ark of the Covenant would fit directly, smoothly right inside this box. I don't think there's any coincidences. So when you begin to realize, well, what is the Ark of the Covenant? It's a power source. And it's a power source that gives off some type of radiation. And we know this because if you didn't have on lead plates, according to the biblical, information, you had to have on lead plates, rubber boots, and all this stuff on before you even touched it. And if you didn't, if you touched it without the rubber, guess what happened? You died instantly. This is in the Bible. So it's telling me electrical charge. And if you were around it too much without the right coverings and protection, your hair would fall out. Your eyes would bleed. You would become sick. Sounds like radiation sickness to me. So this thing might have been both electrical and radioactive at the same time. Perfect to put inside the King's Chamber, especially if, why would they add it? Especially if maybe the Great Pyramid's power generation system in some weird way had begun to malfunction because of the lack of water from the Nile running underneath it in the aquifer. We have to find a way to boost this thing. So we put the Ark of the Covenant in there because everywhere where they talk about the Ark, it's exuding immense power. It's repelling troops and army troops with these energy beams coming out of it in the Bible. You put that inside of the Great Pyramid, all of a sudden it becomes the energy source. And the reason why I believe that Moses was chased is when he left, and I believe that was actually Pharaoh Akhenaten, in my opinion, he took the Ark with him. They was like, oh man, we got to get the Ark back. That's a source of power for Egypt. But without that, we're back in the Stone Ages. Go get the Ark. And they chased him to go get the Ark. That's what I believe it was really all about.
So fascinating. I mean, man, the energy there is just insane.
Oh yeah, it is.
From laying in that box, whatever it is, which I did, and then also going into, well, there's a little chamber you can stand in on the way to the King's Chamber, right?
The antechamber.
Yeah.
It's called the antechamber.
Okay.
It magnifies your voice.
Yeah, man,
times.
I ohmed and toned in there, and
Yeah.
it was like, I did it with a couple other people. It could only fit a few people.
Yeah.
And it was so powerful, like the resonant, coherent energy that
Yeah.
like every cell in my body was just like bursting. It was
Right,
pretty
right.
intense.
It's crazy. I just made a post about that today, actually,
Oh, wow.
this morning. It's crazy, yeah, about the antechamber. Just a meme on my YouTube community. But yeah, that place is powerful, man. That resonance, and the resonance inside the King's Chamber, inside that box, it's like the 2-to-1 ratio. When you start ohming or you gong the box, it creates this crazy resonance. And some people have, out-of-body experiences.
Yeah, and also in the subterranean chamber with that, there's that small little tunnel that I called. Have you crawled through that? Because you're a pretty big guy.
I went down there till it got to the sand.
Yeah.
And then maybe another 20 meters would have been the drop down, another 30, straight down. So I got to the sand part where the rails ran out.
Right.
And I was like, oh man, this is getting small down here.
Yeah, so there's that which keeps going down, which potentially connects to the other pyramids or something, we don't know. But then there's also that small little tunnel that's I don't know, maybe 30 meters that you can crawl to the end of, and it's a dead end with just granite crystal just above you, and just insane. It's wild
insane.
Experience to actually feel experientially instead of just talking about it.
And to be inside of that time dilation bubble. Because the Great Pyramid, the 2 million plus blocks of stone, is so much mass, it creates a time dilation bubble. So anybody that's within the direct, vicinity of the Great Pyramid or inside of it, you're in a time bubble. So people outside that bubble experience time slightly differently than you at the time, while you're in there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Must be really subtle, but calculatable in terms of the difference.
It's calculatable. It's very minute, but it's calculable. They've calculated it. Yeah. But atomic clocks.
Yeah. Okay, so going back to the time, Atlantis and Lemuria, for people that don't know, what is the understanding of the difference of the two? Are they the same thing at different periods of time?
Lemuria is supposedly even more ancient than Atlantis. We're here long before Atlantis was even built. And these people had achieved this particular high level of spiritual knowledge and spiritual technology. It was an island just off a huge continent, but right up the coast of Australia. And it had people there that had immense capabilities, telekinesis, psychic abilities. Telekinesis, for those who don't know, moving things with the mind, right? The ability to see the future, all these incredible things, and it was such an incredible spiritual place. They were in a golden age for a very, very long time. It's not quite clear. I put a map. I have an original map, or the drawing of one of the original maps of Lemuria from some old text that's inside of my book, The Epic of Humanity. So we kind of touched on it, but it literally was a time period where there was a multi-thousand-year golden age that existed on Earth. And it's not quite clear how it fell or what created the fall, but at some point, it could have been a geological disaster because they had achieved such a high level of spirituality, it's almost hard to think that they could have failed there. Maybe it could have been some type of unforeseen geological disaster, as back then, Earth was going through a lot of tumultuous changes. We just happened to meet this small window in time that we are right now, where things are actually kind of peaceful, but the Earth is, it's gone through some incredible geological things.
And so what do you see as the potential downfall of the Atlantean civilization? There was a cataclysmic event, you think, with the flash floods and everything?
Yep. So with the Atlantean civilization, I believe the collapse initially started from jealousy. And so the ring city was the focal point of this jealousy, where some of these Atlantean beings were marrying women, human women. And it was like, all like racism. It's what it really was. Xenophobia, right?
Speciesism, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, what is this? How dare you? And you violated blah, 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 blah. And it started with that. And then when they had given some of these people higher level of estate and higher levels of ranking, that even infuriated others more. And then there was a lot of great resources that seemed to have been hoarded from other capitals. And so that created even more jealousy. And you find that these factions or these people were relatives that were going against each other for control of humans and resources. And at some point, it seems as if that war reached its head and a big battle broke out. But that battle, I believe, extended from Earth all the way to the moon and even to Mars.
How does the moon fit into all of this?
When I started analyzing moon images, like old moon, long before Photoshop existed, images that anyone can download and get access to, you start seeing anomalies on there. And I got into this one data file called the Clementine mission, which is a declassified military low lunar orbiting satellite. And right away, when I saw the name Clementine, I knew it never came back, because Clementine is an old song. Oh, my darling Clementine, you were lost and gone forever. Oh, my darling Clementine. So I said, I bet this thing didn't come back. But it had data, downloadable gigs of data, of images it took of the moon on the other side. So I'm downloading this stuff like crazy.
On the other side of the moon?
Yeah.
Okay.
What they call the dark side.
Right.
I always call it the other side because it's not really dark.
Yeah.
People call it the dark side, but it's really not dark. But these images had incredible anomalies, but things that look like broken structures, broken things just appear to be everywhere. China sent a rover to the moon, and they made the mistake of transmitting in real time what the rover was seeing, and the rover got caught in debris. I mean, a lot of debris, and it's still, I think, publicly available. The images online right now. And what was up there? I think even the whole moon mission was all about a reconnaissance mission to bring back pieces of what they saw may have been the remnants of an ancient civilization, which is why they showed you some part real and some part fake.
Right. What's up with the funky footage that looks like... So you do believe that we actually did go to the moon?
Oh, yeah. We went to the moon.
But there's a lot of footage that just looks super staged, like wind moving through a flag and all this stuff.
It's well, the moon does have a very light atmosphere, believe it or not. It does hold it. It has water, too. There's water on the moon. However, some parts were staged and some parts were real. The real moon mission wasn't just to put man on the moon and say, we were the first to make it. The race to the moon between us and Soviet Union was about to get to that technology. Who's going to be first to get? Because we sent so many satellites around that moon before we ever went there. We even orbited the moon in a capsule before we decided to go, now we're going to land. So that Apollo 11 was a mission after many, 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 many missions. Even the Mercury missions had occurred already. It was about who's going to get their hands on this ancient technology. Who's going to get their hands on this stuff? What can it be used? The first thing they think about, how can we weaponize this stuff? That's the first thing they think about. What can we do to weaponize it? It was a race to get their hands on remnants and pieces of things to bring back to Earth to analyze and maybe even reverse engineer. So to keep everyone out of it, it's, hey, look at this. Look at this pretty moon. And here goes all these, these dry, dusty areas, nothing to see here. But at the end of the day, it was a reconnaissance mission that brought back a lot of things over many more moon missions that we did have. And right now, before they left, they put an array of satellites up there, and they operate on laser communications. And almost every day, we transmit from Earth to the moon a packet of data. Why are we sending packets of data to the moon? Like, why would we do that? Who's up there, and why would we do that? In the declassified, it actually became through a Freedom of Information Act. Freedom of Information Act request on the black box from Apollo 11 mission, the audio and the redacted printout of the audio. We have it. Anybody can download it now. In there, Neil Armstrong is looking down as they're orbiting the moon, and he sees what he calls a convex crater. He's talking about a dome structure. And then he says, wow, I bet the people in there never get out. Now, why would he say so?
Hey, how's it going? Just got a new shipment.
This was no joke. They weren't laughing, they weren't chuckling. He was dead serious. And then when you look at the USGS.gov ground penetrating radar imagery from the former Arecibo satellite dish that we had in Puerto Rico, it shows you what's beneath the moon by about 30 meters. And it looks like gigantic beam structures. So what is going on with this moon? There's something going on with this moon. When the Apollo mission got to the dark side of the moon, comms is out of range now. So you lose comms with Earth because the moon's blocking it, right? But somebody hacked into the comms. Another FOIA Act request that we put in to get that information, and you can hear the audio. And the audio, they're going, oh my God, dude, I hear it too. I hear it. There's something just like music. It's music. What is this? It was something coming off the surface of the moon or somewhere in that vicinity had gotten to their comms. So there's a lot going on up there. And yes, we went to the moon, but yes, we lied about it.
So what do you make of the recent upsurge in UAP sightings and what people are saying contacts with extraterrestrial life? What do you think is happening right now at this time? Its significance and the possibility of like future humans also being extraterrestrials.
There's a lot going on. I'm glad you brought this up, because one thing is, do extraterrestrials exist? I say yes. In my opinion, 1,000% they exist. Human beings, in my opinion, are the new kids on the block. We just got here. On a geological time scale, we haven't been here for a blink of an eye. There's more advanced beings that have been out here, maybe even millions of years before us. That's number one. I think some of them visit us and some of them watch. They're watching and looking, studying, just like we go out to National Geographic. We go out to the wilderness of the Serengeti plains of Africa, and we look at these animals, and then we stun them, right, with a dart, and then we alien abduct them, and we take them out of their hides, and then we put little chips and plants in them, and we take them and we put them back in their place so they can wake up with lost time. And now they're stumbling around, running what happened, and then we track them and watch them. I think that's what's happening to human beings. Not in a negative way, just to see like how we're developing and where we're going and how we're going to come from where we are to where we're going to go.
Not too different from what we're doing with animal species right below us in terms of development.
Exactly. That's what we're doing. It's the as above, so below. It's okay. It's never going to change. And so I believe that they're real. Now, also so there are real UFOs, but there are UAPs. These UAPs, which is why they changed the name, are things that we have reverse engineered based on, discovered craft that were left behind or crashed. And how would they crash? People say, well, if they're so smart, why'd they crash? Well, space travel is not safe. It's hard. And if you come to a planet and you don't know that they may have a particular type of radar, which is what they were using in 1947, a scalar beam, you don't know that maybe this scalar wave is going to disorient your ship and your navigation system is going to make you crash. I think they figured this out by accident when they went to scan to see what the heck this thing was moving across the sky using this new technology called scalar, which Nikola Tesla had left the plans about. They actually rebuilt this thing. It had brought down the craft. And then when they recovered the craft, they reverse engineered the craft. And so that began the process of learning how to crash these things and reverse engineer some of them. These UAPs are alien reproduction vehicles, things that we've created ourselves based on lost or discovered tech that's not from Earth. And also other technologies have come out of that, like Velcro, fiber optics, microchips have all come from these downed crafts, by the way. And so the UAP problem is a big one for human beings, and because it's a narrative being controlled by the governments. And why would they want to do that? Well, look at the way that we've been putting war out on this planet to create money, generate money from war. There's not a lot more places, there's not too many more places we can go to have a war with right now. We've had all the wars. I mean, right now, the wars that are going on are between really us technologically. We're making a little bit of money off of those wars, but not as much as we have made in the past. The next big move is space. And to do that, you have to get everyone on the same page. We need to divert trillions of dollars into space weapons and space protection, the Space Force. And to get this to happen and take money away from education and take money away from healthcare and all these other incredible things that we really need and the cures for diseases and illnesses, what we're going to do is we're going to take that money and we're going to create weapons, because we are on the board of directors of all these corporations like Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin, and we want to get our checks. Okay? So we're going to tell you that there's UAPs that are dangerous to us. They're going to come maybe and attack us one day. They might even have one shoot a ship in the ocean, a naval vessel in the ocean, just like we did at the Gulf of Tonkin incident to create the Vietnamese War. It's the same story playing out all over again, and we have to be really aware and careful to understand exactly what the game is being played, what game is being played, and how we can navigate this and understand what's real and what's not real. And I think that the potential for a fake alien invasion is very high, because it would allow them to divert trillions of dollars without question from us into whatever programs that they want. And those will be black budget programs that we still won't know about what they're doing. We're doing something good with it, don't worry. They just released the first AI jet, completely autonomous, and it went into a dogfight. It was 2 weeks ago. They had to put it in a real dogfight to test it out. We're on Skynet. So now Skynet is active. This thing is out there with its own mind and its own weapons. What happens when it just says, I'm going to go on my own mission? So this is where we are right now. We're on a precipice. Like, we're advancing consciously, but at the same time, we haven't regained our power from the small few that are implementing these dark technologies.
So what do you think is the reality of the nefarious elite or 100 families that really control so much behind the scenes that we're not really, we're oblivious to?
I believe it 1,000%. There are about 100 families that run the entire planet. And these people are extremely dark. They believe it's their right to rule over us. They believe that we're nothing but to be beneath them, that we deserve to have their boot on our neck. And it's not about money with them. It's all about the power and the control at the end of the day. Money to them means nothing, because they can just print as much money as they possibly want. They can just add fake zeros and ones to an account and utilize it whenever they want. We proved this by sending millions of dollars to Ukraine. We just keep sending money. It's just digital. It's numbers. It's like, it's not even real money. It doesn't exist. And people go, they're sending more money. No, they just sent more zeros and ones. It's data, So in that case, it's not about the money. It's about control. And I believe that we as the people on this planet, the biggest thing I have to keep saying, the divide and conquer tactics must fall away. We have to begin to see through them. I'm white, you're black, I'm indigenous, you're from Europe, you're European, and all this crap. I'm the Democrat, you're a Republican. I'm Baptist, it keeps going. Everything is divided. There's no synergy, there's no unity. We have to come to the point, man, and be like, no. We're not going to fall for this anymore. We're going to unite, and we're going to organize, and we're going to take back control of our planet. And I think that's when we're going to see some of these higher beings that have been watching us step in. When they realize that, we're going from being adolescents to grown-ups, we're getting ready to become full-blown adults in our reality, that maybe there'll be a chance for them. Now they'll step in and give us some assistance. But until then, we're just like useless babies trying to still learn how to find our way. We haven't even taken a few steps yet. And I think that we have to come together. And the hardest part is breaking through divide and conquer tactics.
Yeah, I think there's obviously so much value in not being completely oblivious to the possibilities of, other agendas within a small group of families or elitists that are controlling narratives. But also at the same time, like you're speaking to, you have to end the divide and conquer consciousness within yourself first. By becoming an energetically coherent individual, you start to become the the new earth, the new paradigm that's being birthed, versus like Bucky Fuller would talk about how fighting the old systems are completely, you make them obsolete by operating from that new paradigm and not fighting old ones with that same level of consciousness. And so, I think that's actually an empowering frame around this, because I used to, like, maybe 10 years ago really focus on like all the dark stuff that was happening and people controlling, and it makes you feel powerless in a lot of ways. But the reminder, I think, is really important to actually reclaim the power and become that change.
Right. We all go through that same phase. It's a phase. It's part of the process. The breaking down and the building back up. I call it catastrophism. It's a made-up word, catastrophism. We all go through that process like, oh, man, this sucks. Everything is going down the tubes. This is crazy. But in reality, it's like, okay, now that I've gone through the suffering, now that I've shooken myself free of this, what can we do for solutions? And the solution is preach, divide and conquer. Don't fall for it. Get the right mindset. Understand that you are me and I am you. That's an old Mayan term. En la kek a la ken. I am another you. Understanding that we're all the same person, just different aspects of one another, and learn how to love one another, man, the right way, wholeheartedly, like truthfully, and be grateful for each other. Be truthfully grateful for all the things that we have, and that just raises the vibration. And I think that when that happens, man, we'll be able to communicate and network like we've never had before. We're in the age of information where we used to be bound by distance and invisible lines on the planet. But now with these technological devices we have, we can communicate with anybody in any language at any given time of day.
Imagine a group of people playing chess on humanity's back when they're bent over, and everybody stands up. Although they can't play the game, the game's over.
Game's over.
Power in numbers.
That's it, man. Game's over. When game's over, it's over until we negotiate the deal that we want to see on this planet. And I think we need to come up with a much better economic system, and a system based on, on people helping each other and service to others.
I think largely the trouble is that so many of us have come to love their own prisons and to love our own conditioning. It's like if you can condition a society to want what's bad for it in a way, then you keep them controlled.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, human beings on this planet are both the prisoners and the prison guards. So we're both, and we're imprisoning, and we're imprisoning ourselves, and and it's like, man, we keep blaming these people out there. And I keep saying, no, you got to blame ourselves. We got to blame ourselves. We got to look in the mirror, man. We keep playing their game. We're allowing this to happen. We approved it through our collusion. And so we have to realize that.
Yeah. Have there been specific meditation or spiritual practices that have supported you in that process to actually coming to experience that in your reality?
I had a mass meditation against police brutality, not against it in a negative way. But I said, you know what? Police brutality is a real thing. My father died from police brutality, unfortunately. When he was 74, he was beat to death by police. He didn't die on the spot, but later he ended up succumbing to the injuries through going to the hospital and going through massive, what they call a cascade seizure, 110 seizures. And it was from a person that called 911 out of jealousy because he was in the front row of a theater. And they made a fake claim against him. That's why he won the case. But he only got $9,000 and lost his life.
Jesus.
So I said, you know what? I can continue to be dogmatic about this police brutality that's going on, and it started escalating everywhere all around the country at the time. And I started seeing darkness everywhere. It was encompassing me. It was taking me over. I said, I can't let myself go down this path. So I said, we're going to do a mass meditation. And this mass meditation is for police brutality. But what it is, we're going to send a frequency of love to the hearts and compassion to the hearts of the police officers, that when they get in a situation, that the empathy kicks in, not the ego. And so we did a small measurement before we started the meditation. We built up to this over months. We did a measurement and calculation of crime and police brutality. And then we measured it about 4 or 5 months later, because it takes time for these results to come out. And we saw a measurable difference of about 8% decrease in this in police brutality throughout the entire country. Now, that was only with a couple thousand people. Imagine if it was with 1 million people or 10 million people or 20 million people. So we know that this meditation really had a direct effect on the statistics. So that's one that I'd love to do again on a much even grander scale now, because that was years and years ago when I wasn't as big as I am now. So I have more reach. So now I want to do it with millions of people. I think we can really make a huge impact, not just on police brutality, but even other aspects of life.
So this understanding is really beautiful, and at the spiritual Gnostic roots of many religions kind of come to these understandings. And then of course it's controlled, manipulated, changed, like every holy person ever has been, to fit the narrative or control society in a state of fear in so many different ways. And so when you look at people in positions of power over time and time again changing the narrative, what do you think is when you look at the Gnostic roots and like who Jesus Christ as an individual was and what he carried energetically in his consciousness versus what has been changed time and time again through many different religions? I would just be curious to hear you reflect on that a bit.
Yeah, well, I believe that Jesus, aka Yeshua, right? Yeshua is a real person, or was a real person, because I've been to Egypt, you've been to Egypt. I don't know if you guys went to Coptic Cairo after I left to see the house where he actually slept in, which is now a Coptic church. So, and also the entire path that he took through Egypt, staying from home to home, is all there documented, well documented in Egypt. So he disappears from the Bible at the age of 12, and he goes on this journey. He goes to Tibet to learn Reiki healing and Qigong. He goes to India to learn the mystic arts. And then all the way back, he's teaching reincarnation. This is in the Gospel of the Holy 12, which was withheld from the biblical canonized Bible. And so you're talking about a person that had a high vibration that may even have been an avatar himself. It's quite possible, because I even did a video talking about, could he even be Thoth, right? Could he be Hermes, come back in a different way instead of transferring to another body? So, I'm going to come back through the womb this time.
I mean, you look at like films like the Zeitgeist, where they show the overlapping stories of a virgin birth and
so many times
throughout so many different creation stories.
It's like it just keeps happening. I'm going, man, this must be the avatar. He could be the avatar. And when you look even deeper, for example, Jesus's grandmother was also a virgin birth. So the virgin birth now has Mary, and then Mary has the virgin birth of Yeshua. So it just seems to be something is going on here throughout time and throughout history, where this story just keeps popping up over and over again, always coming out through this virgin birth, and this person becoming like this ascended master avatar, which is pretty interesting, And so you see this across different civilizations, across different times, and it makes you scratch your head and go, wow. Now, when he reappears in a biblical text, it's at the age of 32. The Bible picks up and says, I called my son out of Egypt. That's what the Bible says. God is saying, I'm calling my son out of Egypt. He shows up riding it on the back of a donkey in Jerusalem and proclaiming himself to be the Messiah. Now, some of the words that Jesus spoke, I believe, were remixed and changed because the Bible was not written in real time. I think this is where a lot of people don't understand how the Bible became to be. They think somebody was running around, say that one more time, Jesus, I just want to get that last sentence. It didn't happen like that. The Bible was written long after he was already gone, long after all those people were gone. The Bible was written from 100 AD to 900 AD by followers of who? Hermes. Yes. So now it wasn't even written as a Bible. This was just text that was copied from ancient tablets and papyruses onto parchment paper and then stored inside of vases in caves because they couldn't talk about it anywhere else. And over time, people would discover these vases and put together these papers and then rewrite them and copy them and turn them into what became many books and eventually became a canonized book after they handpicked and curated what they wanted. A lot of the information in those...
What the science...
That book is all from the Enuma Elish, the Epic of Atrahasis, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Mahabharata, some of the Bhagavad Gita, the Egyptian book of Going Forth by Day. I mean, I can just keep going on and on and on. All these tablets, right? The Code of Hammurabi, and they turned this into a religious text when a lot of it really originally wasn't. It was spiritual enlightenment. Somebody saw, well, if I could remix this a little bit here, a little bit there, wow, I can control the masses with this information. And so the problem that you have with what happened there is that is like a fish inside of a fishbowl, religion. But spirituality is what it was meant for, is like a fish inside of the ocean. And so you can even put the fish bowl in the ocean, but they can't leave the bowl, right? If you put a cap on it, it's going to swim around in the bowl, in the ocean, and never experience the true fullness of what it means to be an ascended being. And so that's why it's so important for us to educate people on what really happened. I believe that these avatars that exist like Yeshua, I believe that they taught an incredible positive message that has been twisted and skewed over time. And I really do believe that we are here to learn this message today and to incorporate it into our lives, and that the return of the Christ is the return of the Christ consciousness. That when Jesus returned, it's not him returning, it's the consciousness returning of the Christ mind. And that comes back in all of us. And by that method, the second coming will return to the planet.
That Christ mind, once embodied in an individual like it was Yeshua, becomes a reference point for knowing what's possible.
Right.
And like you spoke about the fishbowl analogy, it's the same thing with like I think they're fruit flies, where you put a lid on the jar and they only jump a certain height.
Oh, wow.
And it's a certain type of fly. And then the next generation, you take the lid off, they won't go above the height of the jar, even though they can't get out. It's genetically encoded to be conditioned to only go to a certain limit.
Conditioned limitations.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what you're looking at in religion. Conditioned limitations. You're not even taught to ask a question. Just have blind faith.
Yeah. And I do believe religion serves a purpose at a certain stage of development.
Yeah.
Like, and I do think it can be very beautiful in that way. For a lot of people, that without it would probably go down a very deleterious path.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Which is why when I talk on my podcast, I show people, I have a Bible. Look, this is it. I said this, and I have a podcast where I talk about there's good information in this Bible.
Yeah.
You have to have discernment on what is good and what is not so good, what to use and what to apply.
Like Deuteronomy.
Right. Don't apply Deuteronomy. You'll be in prison. You get castrated and everything, mess around with Deuteronomy.
Yeah. What's up with that? Why? That's crazy.
Oh,
Some of the Old
man.
Testament stuff is gnarly.
Oh, it's gnarly, man. It's crazy. You know, it's because it was written by people. See, the Gnostics you brought up a minute ago, the Gnostics had a very good concept that I truly believe in after really studying the Gnostic texts. The Gnostics in the Nag Hammadi, they come to the conclusion that the biblical text is orchestrated by these Anunnaki gods and not the creator of the universe. And that the same Satan that they're running from is the same entity or energy that has curated this text, and that they're following the same darkness that they're running from. That's the Gnostic summary. And I believe that wholeheartedly after looking and digging deeper and having a talk with a person that just came up to me on the beach one day. I go to the beach for meditations all the time. Guy walks up, and as soon as I looked up, he had a bottle of water he was handing. I knew he was one of the people at the street preachers. I let him talk a little bit. He started telling me about saving me and, giving my life over to Jesus and everything. And he asked me a question. He said, do you know what Satan's about? Because I told him I didn't give my life to Jesus because I believe that God is in me. And he kind of got a little shocked, and he was like, well, you know who Satan is? And I was like, yeah, I know who Satan is. I understand quite intensely what Satan is and what demons are and what darkness is. And he started telling me about Satan. I said, let me ask you a question. Tell me more about this Satan from your perspective. How intelligent is Satan? Now I know the answer to these questions. He's so intelligent. Satan is so smart that he actually is one of the smartest of all the angels. He's not even an angel, he's a cherubim. And everywhere he goes, music follows him. And he's the right hand of God. He's just almost as intelligent as God himself. And he has the power to do this and the power to move through here and do this and contact all these people and communicate in different dark ways and invisible. And I'm like, sounds like a high IQ. He says, yeah. I said, would you say that if you had that ability, it would be one of the highest IQs that probably would exist in the known universe that we know of? Oh, yeah, for sure. I said, okay, interesting. So now, in this book, you're saying that Satan is going to follow this word to the letter that's written by man to his own demise. Oh, yeah. I said, I think a being that's that intelligent, that's that whimsical and mystical and diabolic would probably orchestrate this curated text in a way that you would follow him to your own demise. And the guy gasped. And he walked away. But it's something you have to consider.
Savage. The dude just wanted to give you some water, and he just screwed his whole reality.
I yanked his belief system out of his body like an astral projection. But these are the things that people don't consider because they don't have any research. Their base knowledge is the Bible and just the canonized version. What about the Sinai Bible? 14,000 differences between the Sinai Bible and the King James Version of the Bible. The King James Version of the Bible is much newer, and it was written by King James. I mean, the guy was a pedophile, number one, known pedophile. His number one book isn't the Bible. His number one book is his satanic book, is his number one book. His demonic book and witchcraft books are better, sell better than the Bible. So you're talking about a person into demonism and witchcraft is the person that orchestrated the King James Version of the Bible. It's just like, come on. I mean, we got to do better research. We have to know. And there's a lot of stuff in the Bible that doesn't even exist, like hell was added by Rome. The rapture was added by James Darby. And just so many things that have been added to the biblical text.
Man, there's so much I just want to keep diving in with you. I do want to ask, like, since you spent so much time diving into the ancient history of so many of these different civilizations and possibilities, how do you feel like it really bears fruit? Because I'm curious, there's obviously a lot of intrigue and fascination with a lot of these things. But if there's no hard way to really validate the existence or truth of it, but it's more so, possibilities that we're saying these could be solutions or, explanations for a lot of these things, how does it actually bear fruit in our life that in a way that's transformational? Or is it simply, just interesting podcast talk,
Yeah. I think it bears a lot of fruit because I get a lot of emails from people all the time that says, man, you've changed my life. My life has completely turned around since I started applying the things you're talking about. Since I started researching into information and better and asking myself questions and begin to seek my own answers. We're creating a world full of researchers. That's the ultimate goal here, to get people to get up and stop kicking their feet up and watching the world burn and get out here and learn something. And not only to learn it, because I tell people the knowledge is not power. It's the application of knowledge is power. So once you get this knowledge, well, how does it apply? How can it affect your life? Well, you start thinking differently. You start seeing through paradigms. You start seeing through the matrix. You start understanding when things are put before you, whether they're for you or not for you. You start looking more internally. You start believing in yourself. You start loving others properly. You start doing acts of service. All of these things that kind of weren't there before, and you start forgiving yourself, which is the most important thing. And all of this lesson is learning, like, wow, instead of waiting for an outside deity to forgive me, the most important thing is that I forgive myself. That's the biggest thing a person can do in their entire life, is to look themselves in the mirror and say, I forgive you. You didn't know, you didn't understand at the time, but you're going to learn from this and you're going to become better from this. And releasing that and addressing that. And wow, that's life-changing. Instead of waiting for some outside source to come in, that you doing it through some kind of a dogmatic ideology versus you wholeheartedly doing that, it's a paradigm shift within yourself instantaneously.
For you to devote your career to this, you would have to have such a strong connection to the impact that you are having on individuals. Otherwise, like, you're just going to face so much criticism from skeptics, calling you, like, saying that you have pseudoscience and all this stuff.
And tinfoil hat.
Right.
I've heard it all, but there's much more positive than negative, which is the beautiful thing.
Yeah. And so I'm just curious, any thoughts of how do you navigate the balance and balance between, you exploring a lot of these ancient possibilities and like the modern scientific view, and have you caught yourself in the past with your own bias of wanting things to be true versus like the objective scientific lens?
And listen, I have.
Yeah.
And I think that's a sign of a real researcher.
Totally.
A person that wants to grow.
Recordings just got.
Admitting to yourself, wow, the way I thought it was, it isn't really exactly that way. So over time, your understanding of your perspective changes ever so slightly. It molds and moves ever so slightly as you're able to get more data. Now that I'm like right now with the way the world is, technology is giving me so much information, and I'm getting access to so many different scientific letters and writings and articles and peer-reviewed documents. I'm like, wow. So I'm able to make slight adjustments and even get a much bigger perspective because of what's going on. You have to navigate in a way where you realize that this can't be set in complete stone, because if you do that, it's just more dogma, right? It's just more ideology. I must well just become a preacher at that point. And so I have to be open to say, let me look at everything. There's people that have put out books recently that I don't really agree with their work, but it's kind of in the area where I'm at. So I bought those books. I spent good money on those books so I can read those books so I can get the perspective coming from that mind. I want everything. The good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, because I want to paint myself a much better picture. And I also want to develop my discernment as well.
No, it's powerful. I'm glad you shared that, because especially as you build your career and you benefit from obviously this message getting out more and more, to still have the discernment and the dedication and devotion to truth, irrespective of how it might affect what you've said in the past. I think I really trust individuals that can acknowledge where they've gone wrong and where they've, it's really important. That's what good science actually is.
Right. That's it, man. Listen, it's empirical. We're just trying to get the empirical data and analyze it. And if the data is changing or the data says something else, well then, man, it's got to be possibly something else. We have to be open to that. We can't close ourselves off.
So where do you see like the direction of the future of humanity currently is going, and like the possibility for obviously the mass awakening, but also as it pertains to consciousness, extraterrestrial life, and the advancement of technology? Like, what do you see as what's to come?
I think that I'm optimistic. I think we have a huge, bright future. I believe that we got past the nuclear age, even though there's still nukes that are still technically armed and so forth and so on and all around the earth. I don't believe they're going to launch. I just don't believe it. We had these UFOs show up in broad daylight at missile silos. These nuclear officers testified before Congress about this. This aired live on CNN back in, I believe it was 2001. And a missile officer, the officer that actually had the codes to the nukes, was in this thing. And he said they showed up and they deactivated the nukes. And so when the person that has the hardest job to get in the world, the guy who knows the nuclear codes and the arming codes, says that they showed up and deactivated the nukes, I got to think that possibly he knows what he's talking about, and there's going to be no nuclear war. I don't believe there's going to be a nuclear war on this planet. I think we're kind of beyond that stage. We're almost at the edge of being beyond nuclear war, which is a big thing, because I believe there's a lot of dead planets out there that didn't get past the nuclear stage. I see that humanity is like a baby learning how to crawl and walk. I believe we're going to take those steps, though. We're going to get to an edge of a table and pull ourselves up. Now, the good news about that, we'll be standing and we'll take that first step, and everybody's going to be like, oh, so excited, man. Here we go. We're about to pop 5D. And then we're going to fall, because a baby takes 1 or 2 steps, and what happens? It falls. It's a guarantee it's going to happen. There's no way to escape it. That's the part that's going to be the most crucial in our development. That first big fall, from almost being there, how are we going to handle it? How are we going to perceive that? That's why we need to, like this podcast and many others, to get people mentally ready for the time period when we get to the point where we're at the precipice, about to hit maybe almost a golden age level, and we have a fall. It's temporary. It's not long term. We will stand up again and we'll take more steps, and we'll fall again. But this time the baby won't cry that much, because it knows, oh, I got up the last time. It gets up a lot quicker, and then it takes more steps. And what is the definition of walking? A controlled fall. And that's where we're going. We're headed in that direction. I'm optimistic that we're going to be that civilization. And I think the ultimate goal, and why I think your podcast and many others are so important, it's not about getting to a golden age. It's about sustaining one. That's the key. There have been many golden ages, even on this planet. Why do they rise and fall? Can we learn enough this time in this cycle to break the loop and sustain a golden age? I think that's where we're going.
I sure hope so. I mean, I feel that possibility. I think the intelligence of our heart can feel that as a reality. And do you see that even if we are able to attain or arrive there, that because of the larger yuga cycles, that will too one day have to fall?
Yeah.
Do you think that?
Well, the yuga cycle is there, but it doesn't say anywhere in the text that this has to happen. It just shows what has happened and what the cycle of civilizations go through. But I've read the same text over and over, and it doesn't say anywhere that this is a must. It just says we're showing you the cycle of what's going on here. And so I believe that the Yuga cycle is real, and I think that we're in the Tetra Yuga, on the bottom side of the beginning of a silver age, heading towards a golden age, maybe thousands of years away from now. We're in the beginning stages of it. But I believe that the knowledge gained could break this cycle. I don't think it's any hard-coded law that we must go through this Yuga cycle. I think it's an observed cycle that happens, that has been given to us to perceive what's happening on longer time scales, because we're only living for 80, 100 years. But that if we can sustain it, man, life will be grand. And there has to be civilizations that have done this in our universe.
Yeah, it's just coming to the recognition of how special what we have here is. And The reality is, like, it seems very likely that there's a lot of intelligent life out there in the universe just based off of how vast it is and how there are other ingredients for life to occur. At the same time, we don't want to take that gamble, like pushing for a multiplanetary species and going out into becoming a space-bearing civilization. I feel like over the next 20 years, also with the advent of AGI, like we're so close to this continual exponential rise of technology that is really exciting of how much it can unlock. But like you're speaking to, it's also like, as a species that's still in its early stages of development, it's dangerous to put a gun in the toddler's hand, you know, because it could not do anything, but also could shoot people in itself.
Right. I mean, a person that goes to gun classes and buys a gun is less dangerous than the person behind the wheel of a car. Yeah, I can walk down the street up and down. I'm licensed to carry a gun, and so I can conceal carry. Nobody even knows I have the gun. But a person who gets angry from road rage can run over 10 people on the sidewalk. You see? So you're right, and we have to understand, like, we're heading into this other area now, this weird area with this AI and this robotics, where it can free the burden of mankind, but at the same time, it can put us in a bad situation. And so, because the powers that be want to use it for manipulation and for taking away jobs with no remuneration for it. Like, if you take away my job, then you got to take away my responsibilities. I can't pay my bills if you took my job away. So there needs to be an urgency for the awakening of people, at least on the level of collaboration. I don't expect 5D level yet. Let's get to the mass collaboration level, because we can't allow millions and millions of people to get their jobs taken away, but their debts and bills not taken away. That's going to put the planet in a very bad situation. We're going to have extremely rich people and extremely poor people. Nothing will be in the middle at all. It'll be vacant in the middle. And then also the other risk of these machines making their own decisions in a war, and with war machines connected to them, whether they have control digitally over war machines or whether they're inside the machine, like that fighter jet I talked about that just had a dogfight recently. We as people have to stand up and say, we don't want this kind of technology. Bring us the cures, man. Release the cures. AI is finding cures almost every day for diseases. Bring us those cures. Bring us the robotics and the prostheses for people that have lost.
Son, let me tell
and so forth with the AI built into it so they can maneuver and operate. We got new arms and limbs that operate like real muscle fibers now. They don't look like pieces of metal. So give me one of those. Let me have that on my hand. Bring me, ability to see better from eyes that are losing sight, or blindness, or hearing better. All these things that we can do instead of focusing always on war.
Yeah, and I think it's just a powerful reminder as we start to wrap up this pod, for the